Hey guys, it's Rachel Castile and welcome to Typology Corner. Today I'm going to be talking about Myers-Briggs type indicator and just continuing on with my foundation series. So Myers-Briggs is a personality assessment that was invented by Catherine Cook Briggs and Isabel Briggs Myers. That's mom and daughter. They were really inspired by the research and studies and theories by Carl Gustav Jung. He wrote Psychological Types in like the 1920s, and he was a Swiss psychiatrist who studied patients who had like mental issues in some way, like they were dissatisfied or something was going on with them in a way. And he really studied people in that type of field as a psychiatrist. And he noticed introversion and extroversion and different forms of like perceptions and decision making in different people. And he really developed a lot of like the groundworks for what we call now cognitive functions, which is like mental processes in different people. So Catherine and Isabel really developed his research even more, and they brought it more to the public for just everyday people. And in like the 1940s, they published their very first assessment that was used like for people kind of like taking a personality test to see what jobs was like a good fit for them during the industrial age. They were helping women get in the job market. And yeah, so that's some of the history of it. They wrote the book called Gifts Differing, and it's based off of the Bible verse Romans 12:4-8. I'm gonna read that real quick. For as we have many members in one body, and all members have not the same office, so we being many are one body in Christ, and every one members one of another, having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us. So the premise of it is that we're all born with different gifts. And so it's really evolved and become really the basis of most personality stuff that's studied today. And so some of the foundational things of Myers-Briggs or MBTI is recognizing like 4 different like dichotomies. It's recognizing introversion and extroversion, and then perceiving versus judging, like openness, or more so make a decision first, or open and then make a decision type of like processing, being a perceiver primarily or a judger. And then it's recognizing thinking versus feeling, which is forms of judgment. Whether logical reasons for something, or feeling is more like value judgments, personal values, the values of people around you, things like that. Thinking is more like what works for everyone, what works for me. And then sensing and intuition is 2 forms of perception. So sensing is like the 5 senses, taking in the literal facts of the situation. Memory, just remembering something or just taking in something as it is, that's sensing. Intuition is more so seeing like behind, like reading between the lines type of thing. Intuition can be like just like idea generating or noticing like patterns and cause and effect and things like that. So the basis of it is, in general, among all of these variations, different people have these different parts as a preference over others. And that's where like the variety of the MBTI comes from. A very common thing most people know about is the 16 personalities, and that is MBTI. 16 personalities is when you take those 4 options or 4 dichotomies, it can become 16 different types of people. So I've got some little like worksheets that I wrote up to just kind of help with kind of grasping some of this. So I'm going to switch over to my other camera and just kind of go over some of this. So right here, I've written out introversion versus extroversion. So what is introversion? As a good summary, just introverts, they recharge from time alone primarily. Their dominant function is oriented inward, and they have a subjective focus. Now for extroversion, extroverts recharge from interaction in some form of what is outside of themselves. They're primarily, their dominant function is oriented outward. They have an objective focus. So thinking subjective is more internal. It's more about my experience of something. Extroverts are more objective in the sense of they are focused on the object, not the self, but what's around them, whether it's other people or other things or facts or all the different variations of the different types of extroverts. Nonetheless, they all have an objective outward focus. So yeah. Let's see. Now looking at perceiving functions and judging functions. So just real quick, going back to this real quick, that the basis of this is just to think about it in like natural occurrence type of terms. We all are taking in information and we're noticing certain things, and then we're making decisions on it, or we have certain like values or certain goals that we have already, and that could define what type of information we want to take in to help us meet those goals, or serve a particular people group or something like that. So when you just look at it practically, we're all taking in information, we're having experiences, we're remembering experiences we've had, we're making decisions based on certain things, on certain criteria. It's very natural for us to be doing that. So the primary difference between introversion and extroversion is just the internal process, or the first process, I'll say, is internal for an introvert. There's an internal process going on before the external process that leads to them interacting with the world around them. Extroverts are primarily have a dominant process that has them interacting with the world around them in some way. So if your first function, mental process, is oriented outward, you will be stimulated, or you will need stimulation of the dominant process in you. So as an introvert, in order for them to do that, they need to go away. They need to be alone. Because if they're with other people, or really engaged in some way, they're not interacting with their dominant process. As an introvert, they are interacting with their secondary process, which is how other people are interacting with them, engaging with them. It is through the secondary process. But as an extrovert, it will be their first process. So yeah, that's just to kind of talk about the practicality of we're all taking in information and making decisions on it. So looking in MBTI, we're exploring those variations. So I'm going to go back over and explain a bit on the perceiving functions. So in general, it's taking in information. There are 2 types. I said sensing and intuition. And when you think about sensing, it can be an internal sensing process. SI is signifying, so sensing introvertedly, and then sensing extrovertedly. Intuition is signified with an N, extrovertedly, oriented outward, or NI, intuition oriented inwardly. So there are 4 forms of perceiving. 2 are sensing, 2 are intuition. And then in the world of judging functions, we have, it's just making decisions of some form. Logical reasons for things. So thinking oriented extrovertedly, thinking oriented introvertedly. Then we've got feeling judgments, feeling oriented extrovertedly, and feeling oriented introvertedly. So the more I get into this is like really getting a good picture of what SE looks like. What does extroverted sensing look like in a person? What does introverted sensing look like? What does it look like as a dominant process? What does it look like when it's a secondary process, a tertiary, 3 down, or a lower process in someone? It's like the variations of where these things are. But the way typology works, that you have a dominant process and then a secondary process, and then a tertiary, and then an inferior. So everyone has 4 functions out of these options that they're primarily prioritizing. It's not that they don't have the ability to somewhat see the others. They're just not valuing it consciously, I would say, as much. So, but that's just a good overview of, you've got thinking and feeling as different forms of judgments, and they can be internal or externally oriented, and then different types of ways of taking in information, paying attention to the senses or the intuitive information, oriented toward the outside world or oriented inward. So yeah, that's what that looks like. And then from there, let's see. Here's an example of a function stack. Let's do this one first. So this demonstrated. So an extrovert, their dominant process will be oriented outward. So just picture if this line represents internal and then external. So the subject and the object. So this top part is an example of an extrovert. So let's just pay attention to the top, and then we'll explore this as well. So this person right here with these functions written out, you've got a dominant process, which is the strongest one, that is running automatically. Like you almost don't see it because it's literally your worldview. It's like it's how you see the world. It's where you're starting from, in a sense. The dominant process for an extrovert will be extroverted. It will be focused on the object. Then the auxiliary process as a balance will be internal. And it's secondarily, some people use like the car model, like the driver, the passenger, or mom, dad, kid, baby, whatever example. But if you look at this, the dominant process works on an axis with the inferior. The auxiliary works on an axis with the tertiary. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is how that goes. And then, so looking at an introvert, what makes them an introvert is their dominant process starts internal. The world isn't really seeing it, but it is dominant. It's what's coming first for an introvert. It doesn't mean that they're not social, or doesn't, that they don't love to interact and could have a very gregarious exterior in some form, but their dominant process is internal, and they recharge getting to go back into this place. So their dominant being internal, then their auxiliary is external. then their tertiary is internal, and then their inferior is external, focused on the object. So extroverted functions, introverted functions over here. So yeah. So I just talked about axes. So function axes. It's functions that are connected to each other. So if a person prioritizes extroverted sensing, see sensing, extroverted, that person also, as it works on a dichotomy. So if you have extroverted sensing, then your intuition function within you will be introverted. It's like opposites, right? So extroverted sensing, introverted intuition. And then, so just kind of exploring this one as well. If you have introverted sensing, then your intuition is external. And works the same way for the judging functions for thinking and feeling. Extroverted thinking, going this way. Extroverted thinking is on an axis with introverted feeling. And then introverted thinking is on an axis with extroverted feeling. Keep doing that. It's kind of fun. Anyways, so you can just get used to seeing this, that this is true. TE and FI work together on an axis. TI and FE work together on an axis. SE and NI work together on an axis. SI and NE work together on an axis. So whenever people have a preference, say they have a strong, like if you talk about their two dominant functions, you can also like generate the bottom two based on the axis that infers that they have, you know? So if you have a person who dominantly has extroverted sensing as their dominant function, they're an extrovert. That's their first function. It's also true that their inferior function will be introverted intuition. So then it's like, what is their middle process? So their middle process would have to be, because it'd have to be an introverted process. Because if their first one is an extroverted process, then they either have as a secondary process FI, introverted feeling, or introverted thinking. So I'm kind of going to just go off with what mine is. But I have as dominant functions SE, and then I have TI. So the fact that I have SE and TI, it's also clear that I also have extroverted feeling and introverted intuition as well. I'm prioritizing this one and this one, but on the lower half of my function stack, I also have extroverted feeling and introverted intuition. So that works true for all types within this. So just remember, these are the function axes. Those do work together. These two work together. These work together, and they work together. So now just to show that played out, and I'll use my type. So my type is ESTP. So it's extroversion paired with sensing, paired with thinking, and paired with perceiving. So what that looks like, the center part really tells my function preferences, and then these more so tell a story about the orientation of these. So as a perceiver, an extroverted perceiver, my sensing function, which is a perception function, is my dominant process. It's extroverted S and T. So as a perceiver, I start with the perceiving function as an extrovert, and then so sensing, and then I've got thinking here, extroverted feeling, introverted intuition. Yeah. So just to give you a picture of all of the types, I've broken them down into 4 groups here based on the common function preferences here. And this is how in MBTI, they primarily broke the categories down. They can be grouped together in lots of different ways. You can group there's a set of 4 who share all the same functions. So it's another way of grouping things together. But this is just showing the common, we've got an introverted sensing thinker, perceiver, an extroverted, and then we've got the IJ, the EJ, the EP, and the IP of the ST types. And then in the NT, similar thing going on. They all share NT, but you have an IP type, an EP type, an IJ type, EJ type. And within the SFs, they're prioritizing sensing and feeling judgments, but in different ways. So you get those variations. And then the NFs, they are prioritizing intuitive feeling judgments and perceptions in these various different ways. So I will go more in depth into this, but overall, this video, I just want to give you a picture of just the overview of how these functions work and just really introduce you to the 16 types. Yeah, so one more. This is my type up top. And then this is an example of seeing someone with the same exact function. So the ESTP shares the same functions with the complete opposite. So the I for the N, for the F, for the for the J. As you can see, you flip every letter to the other option and you get the similar type, but opposite, I guess. So what is first for me is last for them. What's first for them is last for me. But these two types, along with the ENFJ and the ISTP, all share the same functions. But yeah, so now I want to show you this picture here. This is categorized showing the ones that share the same function. So this is a cool way to view just all the variations. Like when I first encountered this, there's a lot to learn for sure, but this does give you an overall picture of getting to explore seeing these functions in different orders. And just to think about, if you take, for example, look at all the reds on here, the feelings. You see they can be in an extroverted position. Like in the ESFJ, it's in an extroverted dominant position. In the ISFJ, all in the top right corner, the ISFJ has that same feeling in the secondary slot. And then the ENTP has that same extroverted feeling, but in a tertiary slot. And then the INTP has it in an inferior spot. So when you start to gain knowledge of these functions, you can start to see these qualities showing up in people as a strength and in others more as a weakness. And but these groupings, they all share the same functions, but in a different order. So yeah, guys, that's a lot of information, and I think that's a good start to kind of wrap your head around what MBTI is. And the thing I love about it, it's not just tracking behavior. A lot of times online, personality types are described like, hey, these people are like this, and they're like this, and they're like this. And it's not that those things are like so far off. It's just the true, I would say, science of what personality is. It's more so like in the world of MBTI, it's not just behavior focused. It's more so understanding these cognitive processes and how they work and how they manifest themselves in different people. And Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's something else I want to put in here before we close out. But I think I've covered most of it. So yeah, so that is MBTI as an overview, and I will explore more of this in the future and kind of get more into the individual types and get more into what these functions are in greater detail. And yeah, so thank you for watching. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. I appreciate you stopping by, and yeah, stay tuned for more. I'm also going to explore objective personality, which really takes MBTI to another level, because there's definitely more than 16 types of people in the world. But MBTI is a good basis that a lot of people have kind of sprung off of, and begin to recognize more stuff. And yeah, it's really been very helpful for many people. It's helped me a lot as well. It's nice to just kind of understand how you work and how other people are different than you. And yeah, it's good for communication and just a general understanding of one another. And seeing the gifts in one another and being able to like bring out that, promote that, like health in each one of us, you know? Yeah, because within personality, you can see being like stuck in things that each type have a tendency towards, and being able to like grow and develop. And we're also unique in the sense that we have different growth paths, you know? So that's just kind of a picture of where I want to go with this and continue to explore more. So again, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more. Have a blessed one.